Welcome to the Best Self Podcast. Today we have got an incredible guest. Yonason Goldson is with us today, and man, you are going to get a year's worth of nuggets in 25 minutes from this guy. He's a podcast host, he's an author, he's a speaker, and he's a bundle of inspiration packed into a bearded, smiling rock star. Thanks for being with us, buddy.
It is my pleasure, Brad. Thanks for inviting me.
I wish I could have your beard.
Well, we can talk business after the recording.
It was the running joke with my brothers and my family that I can't even hardly grow chest hair and I'm in my 40s. So it's I read one time someone quoted you as having the most inspiring ethical presentation that they've ever seen. What do you feel? I know generally guys like you and we don't generally like to talk about ourselves. At least I don't like to talk about myself, ironically, despite putting myself to where I'm talking all the time. What is it about your presentations? What is it about your content that gravitates people to you?
The first thing I think is it's not my content. I like to market myself as the speaker with 3,000 years experience, because I come from a tradition of accumulated wisdom. And studying, I spent 9 years in Israel studying the traditions, the legal philosophy and the moral philosophy of the Jewish people. And it's massive, it's massively broad, it's massively deep, and it's inspiring in its in the degree of its profundity. And I don't have to make anything up. I don't have to invent my own content. I've got King Solomon to draw on.
Right.
The trick is to take ancient ideas and articulate them in modern language. Mm-hmm. And even that is not as daunting as it sounds, because we come from a tradition of storytelling, and the human brain is wired to respond to stories, which is why, starting with biblical narratives, but historical narratives, parables, proverbs, these are all different methodologies of putting ideas into story form so that we connect with the story. Right. And then the message resonates with us. You remember the story, you get pulled into the story, and you're naturally going to remember what is the underlying theme, the underlying message that you can take home. And so, I'm just the conduit. Yes. And the wisdom is being, it's channeled through me to the audience and their inner core. That's kind of redundant. Their inner self responds to that style and that message.
Spoken like a true champ. Really spoken like a true champ, because most quality leaders are gonna kind of have a similar answer, that you're just a conduit. You're the benefactor of a wealth of information from previous experiences or other people that are far wiser than, say, myself. I know that I never want to be the smartest man in the room. I want to be surrounded by people that have great ideas like you or like others. Do you feel so you the ethics ninja? Love that too. So cool. I'm jealous. I would like to be the ethics ninja. That is great. Just listening to you talk and hearing your story, you don't feel like to be ethical, you have to win the genetic lottery, right? You feel like that you can acquire that, right?
That's a really interesting question. Certainly not the genetic lottery, but there is something to be said for the environmental lottery. And we have a concept in Judaism. The Hebrew word is a tinek shenishba, translates it as a child who's kidnapped and raised in a society of thieves or criminals. You can't expect someone who grows up in a criminal society to have a finely calibrated moral compass. In other words, we absorb our values from our environment, from our culture, from our parents, from our peers. This is why it's so important as we become adults to learn to think for ourselves, to seek out the truly wise, the purveyors of genuine wisdom. As you said, not to try to be the smartest person in the room, right? Somebody said, if you are, find another room.
Right.
Because Jim Rohn says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's not just physical people. That's the people you spend online time with, the information you consume. We are influenced by those we allow to influence us. And if I wasn't fortunate enough to grow up with parents who were upright and moral and wise, then I need to seek out people that can provide me with that kind of sensitivity and awareness.
Right. That's fantastic. So do you believe people can be reconditioned?
Yeah, well, actually, for good and for bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Right.
If you're very particular, if you're very conscientious, and you start hanging out with people who are not,
right,
then your standards are going to fall.
Right.
One, because you have no models to pull you up,
right.
and two, because those people aren't going to want to be around someone who's challenging them, and so you're going to have to come down to meet them where they are.
Right. Sticking on the topic of ethics, Ninja Nation, Yonason Goldson over there. Is there a specific core value? I know you probably got core values, but is there one that you would like to, okay, this is what you're speaking to a leader out there, or to a young, an adolescent or a CEO. This is what you want to hang your hat on. This is the core value to hang your hat on. Is there one?
I think that what I would say, what comes to mind right at the moment, and this is a theme that I articulated in my TED Talk. Ask yourself, I'm talking to everyone, I'm talking to myself. We should all ask ourselves, ask yourself, not just what do I believe, but where do my beliefs come from? Right? Where do my values come from? Did I reason my way to them, or did I absorb them from my environment? And if I can't articulate why I believe what I believe, then how can I be confident in that belief? And when we talk to other people,
right?
I just wrote this up in a Fast Company article. If I can't explain to you why I believe what I believe, then how can I be sure I'm right? And if I can't explain why you might disagree with me, then how can I be sure you're wrong?
Right.
And it's only by engaging people who come from different perspectives that we can see more of the picture, so that we can be more confident in the perception of reality and the perception of truth that we should all be aspiring to achieve. I had a college professor who used to say, I never understood why people complain about being disillusioned. He said, I would like to be relieved of my illusions. But too many of us would rather continue to be wrong than to discover that we are wrong.
Yes. That's great. I love, you did just write that article. It's a great article, by the way. We'll have to make sure in the notes that we put it in there. It was really good. And you talked about, if I don't understand, I wrote it down, if I don't understand why you reasonably disagree with me, how can I be sure that I'm right? And that is, man, that's a fantastic point. Is there a process to understanding perspective?
Well, the first process is listening, right? As Stephen Covey says, most of us don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply. Absolutely. And I had a different professor, psychology professor in college. He described the conversations most people have as dialogues of the deaf. Because it's hard to listen to people these days. People are on their cell phones. You only hear one side of the conversation. But Back in the day when we used to ride buses and trains and stay in airports, and you could eavesdrop. And one of my guilty pleasures is eavesdropping on conversations,
Sure.
because what you discover is that people aren't actually talking to each other. Each one has a monologue, and they're just leapfrogging over each other. Every time they have to pause to breathe, the other one jumps in
That's so
and
true.
doesn't respond to what was said, but just keeps going in their own narrative.
Oh man.
And they're just sort of pretending to have a conversation, but they're really just talking to themselves.
Right. That is good. You keep kind of leading into, I have all these things I would love to talk about. One of them is listening. I really believe that if we could all have a superpower, we should want our superpower to be a fantastic listener, because being a fantastic listener is going to put us out of the comfort zone into the growth zone. We're going to pick up so much more information. We're going to create perspective. Do you have any ideas on how we could be more slow to speak and be quicker to listen? Do you have any concepts on that one?
I have an acronym for ethics, and the S is self-discipline.
Yeah.
How do you become good at anything?
Yeah.
How do you become good at a musical instrument or a sport or a job or a hobby? You
Right.
have to be willing to put in a certain amount of effort and work, and you have to want to get better.
Right.
So I suppose if I find myself continuously interrupting people, I'm going to have to start there, right? To
Right.
let people, pause. I mean, there are, you've had conversations with people, you're afraid to breathe because the moment you pause, they're going to jump right in.
That's the truth.
Well, if I find myself doing that, first I need to be aware of it. Then I have to recognize it's not the way to have a relationship or to communicate.
Sure.
Then I have to decide, I make the decision that I want to change. And then I actually have to start disciplining myself,
right,
to not interrupt. But I suppose the real answer to the question is, am I interested?
right,
Am I interested in what you have to say? Or do I just want to say what I have to say? Right? If I'm telling you what I think, I'm not learning much.
right.
If I
Right.
want to learn, I have to listen.
That is,
And if I don't want to learn, that itself is something I need to re-examine. Why not? Do I think I know everything?
right.
And if I do, if I think I know everything, that's a problem in and of itself.
For sure. So if you're not listening, then you're not learning. And the getting better part in life is the fun part. I always talk about how, for those that are listening, it's pretty common. We talk about how growth is the only stat that I track. I only keep, that's the only stat that I really keep track of, is growth per word, growth per action, those kind of things. Kind of moving forward, is there a stat that you really attach yourself to? We haven't talked about stats or anything like that. Is there something that you're like, this is how I keep myself accountable, or this is what I track so that I'm continuing to ascend? Is there anything like that for you?
I certainly should. I think we all need metrics, because I'm a bit of a philosopher and a big picture person. That's challenging for me. So a lot of it is mindset. And, that's a big word these days, and I'm all in on it.
Yeah.
It's the way we approach these types of questions. It's the way we approach the day-to-day and the month-to-month and the year-to-year. What's the definition of a good person? Somebody who's trying to be a better person.
Oh, that's good.
And so when you talked about focusing on growth, spot on.
Yeah. Wow, that is awesome. So gratitude, we've talked about environment so far. We've talked about how do we really know if a person's right or wrong. We've talked about, just perspective in general. If a person doesn't have a good grasp on any of those things that we've already talked about, do you feel like part of that's this, they don't have a sense of gratitude? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that's a big one. And, we're living right now in what's increasingly an entitlement culture. And entitlement is a mindset of being ungrateful, because it's always focused on, what should I have? What do I want? What do I need? Where am I lacking? What am I entitled? What should I be getting that I'm not? Right? In Hebrew, the word for gratitude, the term for gratitude is hakaras hatov, which translates literally as recognizing the good. So, there are various exercises. They'll show you a piece of white paper with one black dot on it and ask people, what do you see? I see a black dot. You don't see a whole page of white. You only see this little pinprick of black. It's human nature. We are drawn, our attention is drawn to that which is an aberration. And everything that's the way we think it should be, that just blends into the background. And so it takes an act of will, again, a mindset to notice what's good.
Oh, I am stealing that one.
Please. No, this is mine.
The white paper, black, that is fantastic. I love it. Do you believe it's more important to be willful or skillful?
Oh, willful.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Because if you're willful, you will become skillful.
There you go.
Jim Collins in his business class at Good to Great, he advises CEOs, don't hire people with skills, hire people with the right attitude, because you can't teach attitude. You can teach skills.
That is really interesting. I love that book, Good to Great. It has a lot of good nuggets in there for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So do you believe you could shape attitude? Can it be conditioned?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The sages teach nothing stands before will.
Okay.
And will is different from desire. I might desire a good steak or a bowl of ice cream. I might desire having a lot of money or being famous. Not that those are likely to make me happy.
Right.
But will is a sense of vision. It's a sense of purpose. What am I in this world to accomplish? What are my unique gifts, talents, resources, opportunities? John C. Maxwell, right? Self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
One of the most successful motivational speakers on the planet. And I heard him speak live a couple of years ago. And he's very disarming in his style. He said, "I'm a very talented guy."
You're right.
He said, "But my talents are gifts. I didn't create those talents. They were given to me. And so I have an obligation to use them in the service of others."
Yeah.
That's will.
Yes.
When you have a sense of purpose, I mean, what makes the Marines, the Navy SEALs, what makes them successful is that they have a sense of mission. Now they've trained, they got the skills too.
Right. Sure.
My son was in special forces in the IDF in Israel. And the test to be accepted, he described it as 3 days and nights of crawling in the dirt.
Yeah, I believe it.
It was basically just a test of will.
Yeah.
And he said that the guys who didn't make it through the test generally dropped out in the first 3 hours.
Right.
Anybody who got past that went the distance.
Right.
And that's what the test is designed to do. Do you have the perseverance? Do you have the determination? Do you have the will? Do you want this enough?
Right.
That it's worth our while to take you in and spend our money and time training you to be the best.
Amen. That is great. Yeah. People looking to increase their impact or increase their growth or increase anything. I think all the things that you've talked about so far, they're all directly related. Do you believe, I believe optimism is a competitive advantage in life. Do you have anything that you tie, that's kind of one of my common themes is optimism is a competitive edge in life. Do you have anything like that? Do you have anything that you tie to like this is a competitive edge in life?
I suppose it just fits in with what I just said, and this idea that you have to have a sense of purpose. I mean, I like what you said about optimism, whether you use the word hope. There was a positive vision, because one of the big mistakes we make in our culture, and I don't completely blame it on Thomas Jefferson. But that phrase, the pursuit of happiness, is very dangerous phrase. Because if you pursue happiness, you will never, never reach it. Somebody said, you'll never have enough of what you don't need.
Right.
Right. And seeing happiness as a goal is a terrible mistake. Happiness is a byproduct of living a purposeful life.
Right.
And so the biggest competitive edge, I guess, would be to have that sense of purpose.
Right.
I have to have a sense of destiny, of mission. Again, why am I here?
Right.
What am I going to contribute to the world that nobody else can?
Ooh, that's good. Great job. That is awesome. So do you believe that people that are also pursuing happiness, do you feel like people that have those kind of goals, and it doesn't even have to be the word happiness, like people that are trying to reach something, do you believe that they fall into the category of they believe they've become versus becoming?
I think you could probably apply that idea there. The sages teach who is wealthy? One who's happy with what he has. Now, what's instructive is what they didn't say. They didn't say the one who is satisfied with what he has. Because if you ever had, and I'm sure you have, we all have, you're doing something that you're really engaged in.
Right.
Project. You're reading a really good book. You're watching a really good movie. And you're caught, and you're excited to get to finish it. And what happens the moment you finish it? Let down.
Yeah.
Because now what? Right? We mentioned before, you need short-term goals and long-term goals. If all I have are short-term goals, I meet a goal and now I'm lost. Right. I'm at sea. Right? The sages said, you need to be happy. Well, what's the difference between happy and being satisfied? Happiness is what we feel when we are engaged in pursuing purpose. I'm on my way to fulfilling a mission, to fulfilling a destiny. Either I'm just starting off and I'm excited about the prospects, or I'm getting towards the end and I can see the fulfillment is in sight. That's the time that I am really filled with joy. I know what to do. I know I'm doing something important. I'm part of something bigger than myself. I'm connected to an ultimate goal and I'm working to reach it. There's nothing better in life. But the moment I get it, now what?
So how do we, those types of peeps that are bummed about finishing the book, about reaching the goal, all that jazz, they're really not focused on the road, the success road. They believe that success is the end of the road, when in reality, success is the road. I know that for me personally, that's how I handle. I never feel like I've become, I never feel like I've reached an end. I've never, even if I finish a book or anything along those guidelines, I'm always searching. And sometimes it's to a fault, searching for more. So I've had a problem. I've gotten significantly better about it in my life, but for the longest time, I had a hard time just enjoying winning this day, and always to a fault searching for more, always to a fault having my lens so far out in front of me that I'm not enjoying where my feet are right now. So
yeah, well, that's that's part of the paradox, and one of the many paradoxes of being a human being,
right.
is that we need to simultaneously live in the moment and live for the future.
Right.
And if you're too much one way or the other, it's not going to work.
Right.
You're not going to have that sense of happiness with where you are and happiness with where you're going. And it's only when you have both of those, and it's a tension. They don't work well together.
No.
They don't play nicely.
No, they don't.
There was an interview I heard years ago. I wish I could remember who the artist was. It was a young woman who was a very successful pop singer. And when she was a little girl, her dream was to be in the school play. And then she got cast in the school play. So then her dream now was to be the star of the school play. And she became the star of the school play. And then her dream was to have she was a singer, so she had a dream to sing a solo. And she got to sing a solo. And then she wanted to record a song, and she did. And then she wanted to record an album, and she did. And then she wanted her album to be successful, and it was. And she wanted to go gold, and it did. And go platinum, and it did. And go double platinum, and it did. And in her early 20s, she tried to kill herself. Because now what?
Wow, that's a powerful
21,
story.
22, 23 years old. There's nothing left to live for.
Man, that is really good. I'm sure you're the same way. I've had a number of people across the desk for me, or the table for me, that not quite as severe as that, but they attach their identity to stuff. And then when that's no longer there, they're lost. Like they go into a tailspin. They don't know how to think anymore, because their mindset, they were so obsessed with what's next, that when there was nowhere else to go, they didn't know what to do. Like they attached their identity entirely to something that wasn't the success road.
Sure. Or on the other extreme, you don't reach it, and then you feel like you're a failure.
Right.
Because there's nothing else to give value to your existence.
Right. So true, man. Well, we're pretty close to done here, buddy. I'm almost the Yonason Goldson beast over there is going to be packing here in a few minutes. I appreciate you, buddy. You've been amazing. I wanted to talk about people positive, workplace, culture. A lot of times there's a crummy culture because the employees, or the so-called people underneath the big dog, they don't feel understood. Do you have any ideas or steps, or any way we can form a list for those CEOs out there, for those founders, for those general managers, whatever, those management position people that want to have the best culture possible and let their people know that they are understood and they're being heard? Do you have any ideas how to help those peeps?
Include your team in the decision-making process, in the discussion. It's not democracy. It doesn't mean you have to put it to a vote.
Right.
It means let everybody be heard. Right? When the high Jewish court used to rule, they would always let the most junior member of the court speak first.
Mm.
And then they'd work their way up. Because if the head of the court speaks first, well, I'm not going to argue with him. He's the head of the court. Right? The CEO speaks first. Well, I'm going to challenge the CEO. Let people be heard. Let them know their opinions matter. Let them know that their voices and their input is valued.
Yeah.
And then they will feel that they're part of the process. And even if things don't go their way, they'll understand how the decision was made.
Right.
And if you're not God, and most of us aren't,
right,
maybe somebody will have an insight, an opinion that you didn't think of. Maybe they'll see a flaw in your plan. Maybe they'll see a better option.
Absolutely.
So much just comes down to treating people like partners instead of peons.
It's great.
As allies instead of assets.
Yeah.
When you treat people with dignity and you empower them, or you let them manifest their own power, the politically correct way to say it these days, right?
Right.
They will be so loyal. They will be so enthusiastic. They will be devoted and on board with the mission.
Yeah.
And you will find so much more productivity, so much more sense of fulfillment that they will have and that they will spread to others. It's the ultimate win-win.
So good. Awesome job, buddy. Well, hey, we've got 30 to 45 seconds for you to talk to our listeners, but how can they out-improve their previous best self?
It's when you wake up in the morning, before you get out of bed, before you look at your phone, ask yourself, what do I need to do today to be a better person than I was yesterday? And when you go to sleep at night, ask yourself, what do I need to do tomorrow to be a better person than I was today? Devoting 2 minutes a day to becoming a better version of yourself is the greatest gift you can give yourself and the greatest gift you can give those around you.
Oh boy, that is so good, buddy. Well, I know you're a busy guy, and I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to our listeners. I mean, 5 continent wide. I'm hoping as many of those peeps as possible get to soak in all the good that you bring to the table, bud. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you.
Awesome. Make it a great day.